Tantor Audio presents The Lost Girls, the true story of the Cleveland abductions and the incredible rescue of Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus. By John Glatt. Narrated by Shaun Grindell. Prologue. Around 5:15 on a sunny spring evening, Aurora Marty dragged her green plastic chair onto her neighbor, Altagracia Tejeda's stone porch for a chat. There was a smell of barbecue in the warm spring air, and it felt good to be out after the long, cold winter. The oldest resident on Seymour Avenue, on Cleveland's tough west side, Aurora arrived almost half a century earlier. The 76-year-old grandmother was among the first wave of Puerto Rican immigrants who settled in the booming steel town after World War II. At that time, it had been a respectable street, but everything changed in the late 70s when I-90 was built, plowing through the neighborhood to connect Cleveland and Pennsylvania. Within a few years, Seymour Avenue had declined into a dangerous, drug-infested no-man's land, full of boarded-up, clapboard houses and vacant lots. Predominantly Latino, the impoverished neighborhood's median annual income is under $15,000 a year, with 70% of children failing to graduate high school. At night, drugs and prostitution run rampant, as drivers exit off I-90 to get whatever they need. While some West Side residents describe their under-policed streets as close-knit, others complain of heavy drug use and violence. But crime was the last thing on Aurora's mind that balmy evening in early May 2013, as she chided Altagracia for not taking her allergy medication and chatted with their friend, Angel Cordero. Then suddenly, a frantic scream pierced the evening calm. It came from the White House across the street, flying a Puerto Rican flag. Aurora looked up to see a woman's hand frantically waving through a narrow gap in the front screen door. "Help me! Help me!" the woman yelled. "My name is Amanda Berry, and I've been captured for 10 years. Like everyone in Cleveland, Aurora knew about Amanda Berry and her mysterious disappearance a decade earlier, on the day before her 17th birthday. Then, a year later, 14-year-old Gina DeJesus had also gone missing, a couple of blocks away from where Amanda was last seen. Detectives believed the two girls' disappearances were connected, and over the years they had become one of the city's biggest mysteries. Everybody had a theory of what had happened to Amanda and Gina, with most assuming the worst. Indeed, Aurora had often discussed it with her neighbor, Ariel Castro, the owner of 2207 Seymour Avenue opposite, where the woman's screams were now coming from. "Amanda Berry's dead," Aurora shouted across the street. "Everybody knows that." "No," the woman shouted. "I've been kidnapped in this house for 10 years by Ariel Castro." Aurora had known Castro for more than 25 years and liked him. The gregarious school bus driver was popular in the neighborhood, as well as being one of Cleveland's top salsa musicians. But Aurora also knew he had a terrible temper and could be violent. More than once he had beaten his former wife and mother of his 4 children, Nilda Figueroa, so badly that she had to run over to Aurora's house, begging for sanctuary. Then, after one particularly brutal attack during Christmas 1993, Nilda had taken the children and left the house forever. Since then, things had quieted down at 2207 Seymour Avenue. Ariel Castro now lived alone and had become increasingly reclusive over the years. Now, as they crossed the street toward the Castro house, Angel Cordero said they should not get involved in his business, but Aurora insisted on helping the woman, telling Altagracia to stand lookout in the middle of the road and warn them if Castro returned. Aurora and Cordero then came up on the porch and tried to wrench the glass storm door open, with Amanda pushing as hard as she could from the inside. Kick it, Cordero told her, but the storm door was chained shut and wouldn't budge. 2 doors away, Charles Ramsey was eating a burger on his porch when he heard the commotion. He thought at first someone had been hit by a car, but after seeing Aurora and Cordero rush across the street, he came over to help the screaming woman. He and Cordero began kicking the bottom panel of the screen door together until it finally broke. Then Amanda Berry crawled out into the bright sunlight, wearing a dirty white tank top and blue slacks. A few moments later, a little girl crawled out behind her, in a black wig and pink tights.
"Let's get out of here," Cordero told them, "because if Ariel comes back, he's going to kill us all."
After picking up the little girl, Amanda Berry ran across the street to Altagracia's porch, yelling for a phone to call 911. The child was hysterical, screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." At one point, she tried to run back across the street, and as Cordero restrained her, her dirty wig fell off. Altagracia then handed Amanda her cordless telephone. "Help me! I'm Amanda Berry," she yelled into the phone. "Do you need police, fire, or ambulance?" replied the 911 operator. "I need police." "What's going on there?" asked the operator. "I've been kidnapped. I've been missing 10 years. I'm here. I'm free now." Cleveland police officers Anthony Espada and Michael Tracy were in their squad car on Lorraine and 25th Street when a Code 1 alert came in at 5:52 p.m. The dispatcher told them she had just received a call from a hysterical woman claiming to be Amanda Berry. "So my partner and I looked at each other in amazement," said Officer Tracy, "and said it could be her." Officer Tracy then turned on the overhead siren and flashing lights and hit the accelerator, racing toward 2207 Seymour Avenue. "Before I could even stop the car, she was right there at the window," said Tracy. "I recognized her as Amanda Berry, and I look at my partner in disbelief." Officer Tracy's first question was if there was anyone else still in the house. "Yes," replied Amanda, "Gina DeJesus and Michelle Knight." Part 1. Ariel Castro. 1. Roots. Ariel Castro was born on July 10, 1960, in Dewey, Puerto Rico. The third child of Pedro, Nona Castro, and Lillian Rodriguez. He had 2 elder siblings, Marisol, Alicia, and Pedro Jr., and his younger brother, O'Neill, was the baby of the family. Dewey is a tiny village on the outskirts of Yauco, the coffee capital of Puerto Rico. Over many generations, the Castro family had become the preeminent family in the isolated, mountainous barrio, owning most of the land in a section called La Parra. Despite the family's preeminence, however, their living conditions were primitive. Ariel was born at his father's little wooden shack at the very top of La Parra. At that time, there was no running water or electricity, and all the cooking was done over coal on the dirt floor.
Every morning, Pedro would drive his Jeep several miles down the steep mud track to a well to fill up large plastic water buckets. He would then haul them back up the hill so that his family could wash and have fresh drinking water.
When Ariel was a young child, his father started an affair with a young girl named Gladys Torres, who lived 1 house away down the mountain. Over the next few years, Pedro lived a double life, dividing his time between his wife, Lillian, and his girlfriend, who bore him 4 children. Lillian never suspected anything was wrong, said Ariel Castro's aunt, Monserrate Baez, who was married to Lillian's brother Milfron Rodriguez. Nona had another family, unknown to us, just a few yards down the mountain. In 1962, Lillian finally discovered Pedro's secret family. Lillian was pregnant with her last child when she found out he had another woman and children, said Monserrate. She was furious. When Lillian confronted him, Pedro announced he was leaving her and the children forever. He then packed his bags, moving in next door with Gladys and their children. They married soon afterward. In despair, Lillian then relocated to Reading, Pennsylvania, with her father, Americano Rodriguez. She left her 4 young children behind to be brought up by their grandmother, Ercilia Carabello, rarely returning to see them. I was abandoned by my father and later by my mother, Ariel would write. My grandma raised me. The Castro children had little parental supervision as they grew up. Ariel would later claim to have been sexually abused at the age of 5 by a 9-year-old male friend of the family. Years afterward, Ariel would be asked by a psychiatrist why he hadn't reported the abuse, which lasted more than a year. People who are abused keep quiet, he said, so I did. He also said he had begun masturbating as a child, starting a lifelong obsession with sex. In 1966, Lillian Rodriguez sent for her children, who joined her in Reading, where they lived at 435 North 2nd Street, and Ariel was enrolled at Lowers Park Elementary School. He would later claim that his mother physically abused him every day, using belts, sticks, and an open hand. He also accused her of verbal harassment, yelling negative things and cursing at us. I would ask God for her to die, he told the psychiatrist. One Christmas, Ariel's uncle, Julio Castro, better known as Cezi, arrived from Cleveland, bearing presents for his nephews and niece. He took Ariel a little guitar, said Cezi's daughter, Maria Montez, and we saw music bud in him. Little Ariel loved the guitar, and soon started entertaining at Castro family gatherings. Cezi Castro took a special interest in Ariel, telling him he was his special nephew and a natural musician. He had the smarts, said Cezi. There are very few people who can teach themselves how to play bass. In 1968, Pedro Castro left Puerto Rico with Gladys and their children to settle down in Cleveland, Ohio, where he already had family. Pedro had a good head for business and opened a used car lot on 25th Street and Sackett Avenue, which was soon thriving. In 1969, his brother Cezi joined him in Cleveland, opening the Caribe grocery store on 25th Street and Seymour Avenue. They were followed by their brother Edwin, who opened Cleveland's first Latino record store on 25th Street near Clark Avenue. In 1970, Lillian Rodriguez moved her family to Cleveland as well, settling down at 2346 Scranton Road. By now, her ex-husband and his brothers had established themselves as successful businessmen, becoming one of the leading Puerto Rican families in the city as they had been in La Parra, and they kept Yaucano traditions alive, later financing a social club and an annual coffee festival to commemorate their hometown. The Castro clan is a big clan, explained Adrian Maldonado, who grew up on the Lower West Side, where the Castros flourished. They are very industrial and business-minded. But in 1971, the Cleveland Plain Dealer reported that FBI agents had raided Cezi Castro's Caribe bodega in a Bolita numbers racket sting. According to the article, agents seized cash, guns, and numbers records from 11 family members, including Pedro and Cezi. In 1973, 13-year-old Ariel Castro started at Scranton Elementary, before joining Lincoln Road West Junior High School a year later. He was a below-average student with poor test results for cognitive ability, but he did make the wrestling team, played softball, and was in the school band. While in junior high, Ariel was suspended for touching a girl's breast and punished for fighting classmates. In September 1976, Ariel moved to Lincoln West High School, where his elder brother, Pedro Jr., had just graduated as a straight-A student. Ariel was just a regular kid, recalled Daniel Marty, who was a year below him. He was smart and already into bikes and classic sports cars. At Lincoln, Ariel joined his first Latin band, Los Stenos, playing bass with them in local churches. He was also drinking beer and smoking marijuana. He was popular and outgoing and smart, said Marty. He played the bass real good and had girlfriends. Everybody knew him. Daniel's brother, Javier Marty, was in the same class as Castro at Lincoln West High School. The guy was just a regular Joe, Daniel recalled. He's got a great family and always had nice cars and bikes. On June 30, 1979, Ariel Castro graduated from Lincoln West High School, near the bottom of his class, with a C average and a low grade point average of 2.15.
Over the next several years, he worked a variety of menial jobs, including bagger and cleaner for the Pick and Pay supermarket on West 65th Street. He also began establishing himself as one of Cleveland's most promising Latin musicians, playing weddings, bar mitzvahs, and anything else he could get.
It was mostly like every weekend, he would later tell a judge, but there were times we did perform 2 or 3 times a week. Still living at home with his mother and 2 brothers, Ariel now had money to indulge his passions for expensive clothes, sports cars, motorbikes, and musical instruments. In early 1980, Lillian Rodriguez moved the family to a new house at 1649 Bura Avenue, just a mile down the road from where they had been living. Ariel soon noticed a shy 17-year-old Puerto Rican girl named Nilda Figueroa, who lived opposite with her parents and 5 siblings. Whenever they passed each other on the street, he would compliment Nilda on her looks, and the insecure girl was flattered by his attention. One day, he invited her to hear him play with his band, and she eagerly accepted. Within a week, they were a couple. 2. Nilda. Gramilda Figueroa was born on July 30, 1963, in a small village in Puerto Rico, just a few miles from Yauco. When she was 16, her father, Ismael, moved the family to New York, where they spent a few months before settling down in Cleveland.
Nilda, as everyone called her, started classes at the Max S. Hayes High School, but struggled with English and soon dropped out. She found a job in a factory and dreamed of settling down and raising a family.
Nilda was a plain girl with low self-esteem and had few boyfriends. Her one promising relationship with a young man she had hoped to marry ended shortly before Ariel Castro asked her out. Over the next few weeks, Nilda saw Ariel Castro play several times, and after the shows, he would take her for expensive meals. Nilda's mother, who was close friends with Lillian Rodriguez, approved of the relationship and hoped it might go further. We were seeing each other, Ariel Castro testified in September 2005. I was not in love. But Nilda was enamored with the well-dressed salsa musician, losing her virginity to him one night by the banks of Lake Erie. When he drove her home afterward, Nilda's mother confronted him. We were making out, Castro said, and when I brought her back home, her mother was waiting on the porch. She says, "Where were you?" And I told her, and she had a talk with me. She says, "Now you have to take her." That night, Nilda moved across the street into Ariel Castro's room and would remain with him for the next 14 years.
Around Christmas 1980, Nilda Figueroa became pregnant, and Ariel Castro found them a 2-bedroom apartment, a few blocks from his home. He was now working as a drill press operator for Lesnar Products and making a name for himself in the Cleveland Latino music scene.
The Figueroa family liked Ariel Castro and were delighted Nilda. "He was a nice guy," said her sister Elida Caraballo. "He was real good to my sister at the beginning." Ariel Anthony Castro, Jr. was born on September 27, 1981, and his 21-year-old father was delighted. He would have Nilda bring their new baby to gigs so he could show him off to everyone. But soon after becoming a father, Castro's behavior toward Nilda began changing. He just started being too controlling, too possessive, said Elida, and he would abuse her. I think having the child made him feel she was his property. In 1985, Nilda, who was just 5 feet tall and weighed 135 pounds, would testify how Ariel Castro had started attacking her soon after Ariel Jr. was born. "It was over a small argument," she said. "He just punched me in the face and grabbed me by the head and threw me back against the concrete floor. The second time, he punched me so hard that he broke my nose." Too scared to tell anyone about the abuse, Nilda began wearing a headscarf and heavy makeup to hide the severe bruising from his constant beatings. Ariel Castro had also instituted a strict set of rules for Nilda to follow. She was never to leave the apartment without his permission, and when she did, she had to wear long, dowdy dresses so other men wouldn't look at her. Castro even stipulated where she could do her grocery shopping and what items to buy, right down to breakfast cereals and milk brands. He would constantly try to catch her out by pretending to have left the apartment and then lying in wait downstairs. If he ever caught her disobeying him, there would be a savage beating. He isolated her, said Elida. She never had any friends anymore, and saw us less and less. Castro even told her what television programs to watch, banning The Cosby Show as he did not like black people. Every night he would come home and run his hand over the back of the television to see if it had been turned on. Then, if it was still warm, he would check the TV guide to see what shows had been on, and beat her if she had watched something he disapproved of. When Nilda became pregnant again in March 1982, the beatings became worse. "I was pregnant," she recalled, "and he wanted me to get up and do the dishes. When Nilda said she had morning sickness and would clean up later, Castro viciously attacked her. He just punched me in the mouth and knocked 2 of my teeth out," she said. "I had told him I was too tired to get up." Ariel Castro was now working for the Cosmo Plastics factory, and with a second child on the way, the family moved into a small apartment in Nilda's father, Ismael Figueroa's house, to save money. But even living under her father's roof did not temper his violent behavior. He regularly locked her in there, Ismael told journalist Alan Hall, and I know he beat my daughter, who told us to not get involved. On January 13, 1983, Nilda gave birth to a baby girl, whom they named Angie. But when Elida and her brother Frank arrived to see the newborn baby, Castro refused to allow them. "He was so strict," Frank recalled. "Angie was a little baby, and he wouldn't let us touch her. He didn't want anyone near his daughter." After Angie was born, Ariel Castro's behavior became even more extreme. During one argument, he shoved Nilda into a large cardboard box and closed the flaps. He told her, "You stay there until I tell you to get out," said Elida. "That's when I got scared and ran downstairs to get my parents." A few months later, Ariel Castro was fired from the Cosmo Plastics factory and went on welfare. He was now at home most of the time, using Nilda's food stamps to buy cocaine. His toddler son kept out of his father's way as much as possible, especially when he was in a bad temper. Outside his immediate family, no one suspected what was going on in Ariel Castro's house, as he was so good at hiding it. He had no real friends, other than his brothers Pedro and O'Neill, who both drank heavily and still lived with their mother. On weekends, he would arrive at gigs in his blue Mustang, with his bass guitar and amplifier. He could be charming and charismatic, although some thought him weird and eccentric. "I've known Ariel since he was a kid," said Bill Perez, who owns Belinda's nightclub, where Castro often played. "He was a musician at a young age and was always different." Castro would dress up for a show, wearing a black silk shirt, a Panama hat, and sporting a flashy diamond earring. Even if the band who had hired him for the night had a uniform, he refused to conform. "Ariel was weird and used to stand out," said Perez. "He could be demanding and cocky at times, and always wanted to be the king of the group." In 1985, Ariel Castro found a driving job for Kumba Motors and moved Nilda and their 2 young children into a new apartment at 9719 Denison Avenue. There, his violence escalated even further. During one argument, he punched Nilda in the nose and broke it again. He made her swear not to report him to the police before allowing her to go to Grace Hospital to have it set. A few weeks later, Nilda was back in the hospital after Castro repeatedly kicked her in the ribs when she said something he didn't like. "They took an X-ray," Nilda later said, "and they found that I had my rib shattered." On another occasion, Castro dislocated her shoulders by twisting her arm behind her back and throwing her around the bedroom. "He felt that it was some kind of punishment that I needed," she would explain. Once, he hit her over the head with a metal bar, putting her in the hospital for 3 days. She suffered a serious concussion, and it took more than 40 stitches to close up the wound. As before, Castro made her promise not to call the police and prosecute him before allowing her to get treatment. "That's the only way he would let me into the hospital," Nilda later explained, "because he wanted me to die that day. He wanted me to bleed to death." Although the doctors at Grace Hospital were aware of the abuse she suffered, they were powerless to call in the police without her permission. "They weren't too happy about me going home," she said. During one attack in 1987, Castro punched her in the eye, causing permanent damage. "He came at me full force with his fist," she later testified. "He punched me in the eye. There's a lot of nerve damage." Then, in January 1988, when Nilda was pregnant again, he hit her over the head with a barbell. "I was 9 months pregnant," she said. "He hit me over the head with a hand weight, beat me." Amazingly, just a few days later, Nilda gave birth to a healthy baby girl they named Emily Lizette. Over the next 2 years, the savage beatings continued. But on December 30, 1989, it became a police matter. At 6 that night, O'Neill Castro arrived at their apartment, wanting to go out for a drink. When Nilda asked where he was going, Ariel started slapping her in the face. When Nilda tried to run away, he grabbed her, slamming her hard against the wall repeatedly. Finally, she managed to escape and ran up the stairs to her neighbors, who called the police. Ariel Castro was then arrested and taken into custody on suspicion of assault. Nilda and 2 of her small children were taken by ambulance to St. John's Hospital, where she was treated for a bruised right shoulder and interviewed by police. A Cleveland Police Department report of the incident states that she told officers she had been Ariel Castro's common-law wife for 9 years. Victim states she was assaulted by the suspect on several other occasions, it read, but made no official complaint. As Nilda was too scared to swear out a criminal complaint against Ariel Castro, Police had to let him go without charging him. Life with my father.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?